Hello, networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where I will answer one of your questions. And in this episode, we're going to do speed round number 9, where I will answer some of your specific questions and challenges that you have of becoming a network engineer. So let's go ahead and get started. And this question, the first question, is from Yushi, and he is a CCNA with a routing and switching background. He's currently pursuing his CCNA in security. And he is currently working as a desktop support / junior system administrator, basically doing Windows software installations and a little bit of networking. He does a little bit or rarely work with routers and switches and some firewalls for some of his company devices that are managed by another branch in Germany. So his question is this. He says, I want to become a network engineer and I don't really like system administration. So I would like to know if you have any advice for me and steps to progress in this field. Once again, thanks. So let's talk about that. So the very first advice that I would give is to watch all the episodes on this channel. I give a lot of good information and advice for what to do if you are a sysadmin or another position and you want to become a network engineer, some of the things that you should do or look into or jobs to apply for. So definitely do that. But I want to expand on this conversation further. Actually, another person posted a very somewhat similar question that I'll talk about later on. But really, what's important to understand is that if you are a system administrator, you will have, if any, very basic network functions. I mean, very, very little. It will all depend on the company that you're working for and the kind of equipment that you currently have. So if you're working for a small size company or an SMB size business, and you are a system administrator, you might do a little bit of networking and firewalls, but it won't really be enterprise like large scale switching and routing. So you got to keep that in mind. But it all depends on the company that you're at and what kind of network responsibilities you may have as a system administrator. Now, it's important to understand that being a system administrator is definitely a good step. Is one of the good steps before you become a network engineer. A lot of people don't become network engineers right off the bat because you need to have some kind of a foundation, like working with desktops and users and working with servers that are interacting with these desktops. That's a really good foundation because when you get to networking, you're looking at this now at a higher perspective of how all these things are connected. So that's really important to understand that. So if you're in that position as a system administrator and you want to become a network engineer and you're doing a little bit of servers a little bit of routers and switching and firewalls like that, you want to basically ask the question. You want to go to your management staff, your boss, colleagues, anyone within the company and ask what kind of opportunities exist for you to maybe become a network engineer within that company's environment. They may have their own networking department or they may not have a networking department. It all depends on the size of that organization. So you want to ask those questions. And furthermore, ask what is required for you to even get to that potential opportunity. Is it certifications? Is it training? What kind of things is required for you to kind of move ahead and become a network engineer? You want to kind of ask those questions to see if there's anything there. Because if you are a sysadmin, and if that's flexible, that you can go into more of a networking role, then it makes more sense within the company to do that because you have more history to do so. Now, if you do talk to your management staff and they do tell you that there is potential opportunities where you can get into more of a networking role, and they tell you what you need to do for that. If you don't see any serious progress within 3 to 6 months, you should probably leave or leave sooner. If you have these certifications or if you have just a little bit of experience, whether it's a little bit of routers and switches and firewalls, all that is experience. Everything counts and should be reflected on your resume. And the next question, which is a quick one, is from Ian Karen. And he has a question about some training content recommendations from our website. So he says, is there any other videos you recommend that will help me in the next 2 years to become a network engineer? I feel like certifications are good as long as you have experience. But most of the stuff from the certifications you can barely use on a daily basis at work. First off, you are absolutely correct. Certifications are really good, but they're much better and recognized when you have the experience. I sometimes really ponder on the idea of certifications. Like, why do they even exist in the first place? Because they really can't teach you anything practical, because each different environment will be different. Because here's the thing to understand about certifications, or I'm sorry, about the real world and real networks. These decisions are mostly based on budget. So a company will have a particular lot of money that they need to use or what they can spend for a project. So they're looking at what their options are, what kind of hardware, really defining what are our requirements. If they're too crazy, then that could be basically too much money for us to spend. These decisions for how networks are built is based on money. Simple as that. So that means that if your manager says this is how much money that we have to spend for this project, and you look at that and you're thinking, wow, all of that can just buy one router by itself. That's not going to work. Certifications don't teach you that. Practical learning does. And that only happens with actual real world experience. But that applies for anything. Forget about being a network person. If you're a doctor, yes, you're getting the education required, or maybe you become a lawyer. Yes, there's the education involved. But you're only a good doctor or a good lawyer or a good contractor, construction worker, whatever it may be. You're only great at that with years of experience. So that's what certification really is. It's just more of education, building foundation so that you know what is OSPF. Okay, that's important to know what that is. Or you know what is routing and switching, and you know pros and cons, best practices. That's important, the educational aspect. But when you're actually out there and you're configuring this stuff, you can try to adapt and say, okay, this is what OSPF does, so let me just try to do it based on some of their recommendations. That's really how I have to treat certifications and how you should treat it as well. It's just more of laying the groundwork so that you have that. So when you do configurations, you're not completely in the dark or blinded. Okay, so let's get back to this question from Ayan Karen. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. So what training would I recommend to kind of help you to gain more practical experience for what really matters? So we have a new training series, part of our solutions and technology training. And we have a video series that will teach you how to deploy a internet edge and LAN solution step by step. So here is what that topology looks like. You can go to the website to get more information on what kind of topics are being discussed. But this is something that is a practical network that many networks have today. Now, this training is focused on a smaller scale of that, but it can be much bigger with more access switches. So check out that particular series. There's an introduction video. There's even a sample video to kind of see what you can get. But this is really a good example of practical training, because this is what you can use in your own environment for your customers or even for the company that you're working for. Our next question is from Days Theon, and he says, I love your videos, really inspirational, watch most of them. Thank you very much for that. I was wondering, how do you feel about veterans trying to get into the networking field once they finish their time in the service? I'm planning on transferring to the civilian side and doing networking once I'm done with my time in the military. I'm in IT right now, but I don't get a lot of cool stuff from my civilian counterparts do. I know networking is definitely something that I want to do. I also have a top secret clearance. Is there any benefit having this for IT? So I know a lot of people that have transitioned from the military into the civilian world and working as a network engineer. Actually, one of my very good friends that I worked with, he was part of my team for the Department of Energy, working on the backbone infrastructure. He's a Navy guy. He'd been in the Navy like 20 years ago. And when he started working, he just started building his experience up and, working on networks and things like that. He's a great guy. I still see him from time to time. We do coffee and chit chat. Like, what are you guys up to in the Department of Energy over there? He's a great, great guy. So what I would recommend is to look into getting to or applying for opportunities or looking for opportunities. Probably the better word to say. Looking for opportunities within government or university-based environments. Those seem to have the most good effect for people who have a military background wanting to get back into the civilian world and doing, networking, server, anything in the IT field. So I would say start there because, again, the people that I have seen, they have been in those environments and they're there for 20, 30 years. So I would recommend that. Furthermore, if you have a previous clearance, getting a clearance in a government-based network will make things a lot easier because you've been through already a detailed background check. I know about that. I got a clearance as well when I was working for the Department of Energy, a top secret clearance, I guess. And there were a lot of things involved for that. It's a very expensive thing that they have to pay for to make sure that, can we trust you around classified information, classified networks, that sort of thing. So having a previous clearance does hold a lot of weight and value when you could be potentially applying for a job, especially in the government sector.